Hello, my dear friends. Today I am sharing my exciting journey in a new country, a new city, New York. This story is about my experiences, my struggles, and my growth as I navigate life in the United States. My name is Emma Carter, and this is my story of learning, adapting, and discovering myself in the heart of one of the busiest cities in the world. I grew up in a small town in France, where life was simple and predictable. I always dreamed of visiting the United States, especially New York, a city full of lights, dreams, and endless possibilities. But my biggest challenge? My English was not strong. I could read and understand a little, but speaking fluently was a struggle. However, life gave me a chance to improve when I got the opportunity to study and work in New York. When I first landed at John F. Kennedy International Airport, I felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The moment I stepped out of the plane, I was surrounded by people speaking English at full speed. Some spoke so fast that I could barely catch a word. My heart pounded. I had prepared for this, but reality was different from learning English in a classroom. A taxi driver greeted me with a smile. "Where to, miss?" I hesitated for a moment, struggling to form a sentence. Uh, Manhattan. Uh, Hotel, I said nervously. He nodded and helped me with my luggage. As we drove through the city, I stared out the window, mesmerized by the tall buildings, the yellow taxis, the busy streets, and the bright billboards. I had seen these in movies, but seeing them in real life was different. When I arrived at my hotel, I felt exhausted but excited. At the check-in counter, a receptionist asked me, "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes. I booked room," I stammered. I knew what I wanted to say, but my words didn't come out smoothly. The receptionist smiled kindly. "No worries. Can I see your passport?" I quickly handed it to her, feeling relieved that I managed to communicate. After checking in, I went to my room, sat on the bed, and took a deep breath. "This is it, Emma," I told myself. "You are in New York. Now, you have to learn, speak, and grow." Exploring New York and facing my fear, the next morning, I decided to explore the city. My first stop was Times Square. The moment I stepped onto the crowded streets, I felt overwhelmed. People were rushing past me, talking on their phones, laughing with friends, or hurrying to work. Bright lights flashed from giant screens, and the sound of honking cars filled the air. I wanted to order coffee at a cafe nearby. As I stood in line, I rehearsed in my mind, "One coffee, please." But when it was my turn, I panicked. "What can I get for you?" the cashier asked. Uh, uh, one, um, coffee," I muttered. "What size?" she asked. I froze. Size? Oh no. I had forgotten that coffee sizes in America were different. Uh, Medium? I guessed. "Sure. Anything else?" I shook my head quickly. "No, thank you." When I finally got my coffee and sat down, I sighed. Speaking English was harder than I thought. Even small conversations made me nervous. Making friends and learning English determined to improve, I joined an English speaking club at a nearby community center. That's where I met Lisa Brown, a friendly girl from Texas who was also new to New York. She spoke English fluently and loved helping others. "Hey, Emma." Don't be nervous about English. You're already speaking, and that's a big step. Lisa encouraged me. I smiled shyly. I try, but hard. You're doing great. Just keep practicing, she said. Lisa and I became close friends. She took me to different places: Central Park, the Empire State Building, and even Broadway shows. Each time, I practiced speaking. Sometimes I made mistakes, and people didn't understand me, but I kept trying. One day, Lisa invited me to a small party at her apartment. "You'll meet some cool people," she said. At the party, I met her friends: Michael Johnson, a software engineer; Sarah Miller, a journalist; and James Anderson, a photographer. "Where are you from?" Michael asked. From France," I replied nervously. "Wow, France! That's amazing! What do you do here?" "I, study and work, improve. English," I said. "You're doing great. English is hard, but you're speaking, and that's what matters," James encouraged. I felt a little more confident. That night, I realized that people were kind and patient. No one laughed at me for making mistakes. Challenges and growth, even though I was improving, there were still hard days. One day, I got lost in the subway. I was supposed to take the train to Brooklyn, but I took the wrong one and ended up in the Bronx. When I asked for directions, people spoke so fast that I didn't understand. I felt frustrated and almost cried. But then I reminded myself, "This is part of the journey, Emma. Don't give up." I finally found my way back, and that experience made me stronger. Another challenge was my job. I worked part-time in a small bookstore. Customers often asked me questions, and I had to respond in English. At first, I struggled, but slowly I got better. One day, an old man came into the store and asked, "Do you have any books on American history?" I took a deep breath and answered, "Yes." "Follow me. This, this section has history books." He smiled. "You're not from here, are you?" "No, I from France. But I learning," I said. "You're doing great. Keep going," he encouraged. Little by little, I gained confidence. The moment I knew I had improved, months passed, and one day something amazing happened. Lisa and I went to a coffee shop, and without realizing it, I ordered fluently, "Hi, can I get a cappuccino with almond milk, please?" The cashier nodded and asked, "For here or to go?" "To go, please." When I got my coffee, Lisa smiled. "Emma, do you realize what just happened?" I blinked. "What?" "You just ordered without struggling. Your English has improved so much." I gasped. It was true. I had spoken naturally. I laughed, feeling a deep sense of achievement. The days turned into weeks, and as I continued my life in New York, every moment felt like a brushstroke painting a picture of transformation. I started each morning with a ritual, waking up to the distant hum of the city, savoring a quick breakfast of bagels and coffee from the corner deli, before setting out on my daily adventures. New York, with its dynamic mix of cultures, endless noise, and unyielding energy, was becoming my classroom, my playground, and my personal proving ground. One sunny afternoon, I decided to visit the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The grandeur of the museum left me in awe, and as I wandered through the vast halls, I felt like I was traveling through time. There were paintings by famous masters, ancient sculptures, and artifacts that told the story of human civilization. I met a kind gentleman named Robert Sullivan, a retired history professor who was visiting the museum with his wife, Margaret. We struck up a conversation about art and history, and despite my halting English, Robert took the time to explain the stories behind each exhibit with genuine enthusiasm. His gentle encouragement made me realize that every encounter was an opportunity to learn, not just about the world, but also about myself. Every encounter in New York, whether with friendly strangers or new acquaintances, nudged me to step further out of my comfort zone. Lisa Brown, my steadfast friend from the English Speaking Club, introduced me to her cousin, Rebecca Thompson, who worked as a tour guide in Central Park. Rebecca invited me on one of her guided walks, and as we strolled along winding paths and beneath the towering oak trees, she explained the park's history and its significance to New Yorkers. With each word she spoke, I jotted down new phrases and expressions in my notebook. I practiced them aloud, feeling a small surge of confidence with every correctly pronounced word. One evening, while dining at a small Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village, I was seated next to a couple celebrating their anniversary. The gentleman, a jovial man named Anthony Martinez, was full of stories about his youth and his time serving in the United States Navy. As the conversation flowed, I listened intently, capturing snippets of American slang and cultural references. Anthony's vibrant narrative about life in the military and his travels across the country painted a rich tapestry of experiences that deepened my understanding of American life. I found myself sharing a bit of my own story, my journey from France to New York, and how every day was a lesson in courage and persistence. The diversity of New York also introduced me to challenges I had never imagined. Once, while commuting on the subway, I became entangled in a conversation with a group of young professionals who were discussing a high-profile tech conference in Manhattan. Their rapid exchanges of ideas and buzzwords left me both intimidated and fascinated. I scribbled down notes on every new term, determined to research and understand the technology driving the future of the United States. Later that evening, in the solitude of my modest apartment near the East Village, I spent hours poring over articles and videos, piecing together the puzzle of Silicon Alley, a world that, until then, had been as mysterious to me as a foreign language. In the midst of these bustling experiences, I never lost sight of my goal: to master English and immerse myself in the culture of this vast, ever-changing country. I enrolled in an advanced language course at a community college where I met people from every corner of the globe. Among them was Daniel Rivera, a charismatic young man from California who shared his insights into American literature, and Sarah Nguyen, an insightful and empathetic classmate from a small town in Texas. We studied together, discussed complex grammatical structures, debated literary themes, and even explored the nuances of American humor. In those classroom sessions, I discovered that language wasn't merely a tool for communication. It was a living, breathing part of who I was becoming. Sometimes the city tested my patience and resolve. I recall one rainy day when my umbrella flipped inside out in the gusty wind near Bryant Park. Drenched and frustrated, I ducked into a nearby coffee shop where I met Jenna Kim, The owner. Jenna was a woman of immense warmth and resilience who had built her business from scratch. Over a shared cup of hot tea, she listened to my woes and shared her own story of struggle and triumph. New York isn't about perfection, she said softly. It's about getting up every time you fall. You learn and you grow. Her words resonated with me deeply. In that small, steamy haven from the storm, I began to understand that every mishap and every mispronounced word was a stepping stone on my path to becoming fluent, not only in English, but in life itself. As time passed, I became more familiar with the heartbeat of the city. I began exploring neighborhoods beyond the well-trodden paths of Manhattan. I took the ferry to Staten Island, wandered through the quirky streets of Williamsburg and Brooklyn, and even found moments of quiet reflection in the little-known parks, tucked away in the Bronx. Each neighborhood had its own flavor, its own rhythm, and each encounter deepened my appreciation for the cultural mosaic that was the United States. One particularly memorable encounter occurred during a summer street festival in Queens. The air was filled with the enticing aromas of food from every corner of the globe, and the sound of diverse languages blended into a symphony of human connection. At a booth offering traditional Mexican empanadas, I met Carmen Lopez, a vibrant woman with a contagious laugh and a story as rich as the spices in her cooking. Carmen, who had migrated to the United States many years ago, recounted tales of her journey and the challenges of starting over in a foreign land. Her words, spoken with a mix of Spanish and English, reminded me of the beauty of blending cultures. I was captivated by her resilience and her unwavering pride in her heritage. Each new friendship added layers to my understanding of American society. I found that behind every accent and every stumble in speech, there was a story of aspiration and hope. Whether I was conversing with a Wall Street banker, on a park bench in Battery Park, or sharing a quiet moment with an elderly woman in a bustling Chinatown tea house, I realized that New York was a tapestry of dreams woven together by people from all walks of life. My work at the quaint bookstore continued to be both a challenge and a comfort. The familiar scent of old pages and the soft murmur of readers created a sanctuary where I could practice English without the pressures of the outside world. One day, a young man named Kevin Daniels, who worked as a graphic designer, entered the store searching for books on art and design. I eagerly assisted him, my English smoother than it had been just months earlier. Our conversation turned into a discussion about creativity, art, and the transformative power of stories. Kevin's encouragement and genuine interest in my progress boosted my confidence immeasurably. Beyond the tangible progress in language, New York nurtured an inner transformation. I began to understand that my journey was not just about learning English. It was about finding my voice in a land that pulsed with endless possibility. I started writing in a journal every night, recording my thoughts, struggles, and small victories. Over time, those journal entries became a chronicle of growth, a testament to the power of perseverance. I wrote about the beauty of the sunset over the Hudson River, the thrill of making a new friend on a crowded subway, and the quiet moments of introspection in the early hours of the morning. With each entry, I saw my language improve and my confidence blossom. One crisp autumn evening, as I walked along the winding streets of the Upper West Side, I found myself reflecting on the many faces of New York. The city was no longer just a destination on a map. It had become an integral part of my identity. The cobblestone streets, the eclectic mix of old brick buildings and modern skyscrapers, the mosaic of voices that filled the air, all of it had taught me lessons that extended far beyond the confines of a classroom. I realized that every day in New York was a chapter in my own personal epic, a narrative of resilience, adaptation, and growth. There were moments when the city's relentless pace seemed overwhelming. On particularly busy days, when the noise and chaos threatened to drown out my thoughts, I would retreat to the quiet corners of local parks or find solace in the comforting silence of a small neighborhood library. In those moments of solitude, I revisited the simple truth that every step, every misstep, was part of my journey toward becoming a more confident speaker, a more thoughtful listener, and a more empathetic human being. New York also introduced me to the world of arts and performance. I attended open mic nights at cozy venues in the East Village, where poets, musicians, and storytellers bared their souls in raw, unfiltered expressions. One night, I mustered the courage to share a short poem I had written about my journey, a poem that wove together my initial struggles, my moments of triumph, and the unyielding hope that had carried me through it all. As I recited my words, the audience listened intently, their eyes reflecting empathy and encouragement. That night, as I stepped off the small stage, I felt a profound connection to the creative spirit of the city. It was as if New York had embraced me fully, acknowledging the courage it took to speak one's truth in a language that was once foreign to my heart. In the backdrop of all these personal milestones, the rhythm of the city continued unabated. I experienced the thrill of watching a live performance on Broadway, the calm of a quiet morning at a local bakery, and the festive energy of cultural celebrations that showcased the diversity of the United States. Every event, every conversation, added to the intricate mosaic of experiences that shaped my life in New York. As the seasons changed, so did I. Winter arrived with its frosty air and the sparkling magic of holiday lights illuminating the city. I joined in the festivities, savoring hot chocolate from street vendors, skating on the icy surfaces of outdoor rinks, and sharing warm smiles with strangers bundled in coats and scarves. The holiday season in New York was a time of both reflection and renewal, a reminder that no matter how challenging the journey, there was always beauty to be found in the simple act of connection. Throughout this journey, my relationship with language deepened further. I began to see English not just as a tool for communication, but as a bridge connecting me to the vibrant tapestry of American culture. I enrolled in additional workshops and conversation circles where I met mentors like Professor Jonathan Ellis, a soft-spoken, thoughtful educator with a passion for linguistics, and fellow learners from various corners of the globe. Together, we celebrated our progress and shared our unique challenges. Every discussion, every shared laugh over mispronounced words was a reminder that learning was a collective experience. There were days filled with challenges. A day when a misunderstood remark at a busy restaurant led to an awkward silence, or an instance when a hurried conversation on the subway left me flustered and self-conscious. Yet, each of these moments became a lesson. I learned to ask for clarification when needed, to laugh at my mistakes, and to appreciate the inherent beauty of imperfection. New York taught me that language was a living entity, ever evolving, ever adapting, much like the city itself. As my confidence grew, I also started to give back to the community that had welcomed me so warmly. I volunteered at local literacy programs, helping newcomers navigate the intricacies of the English language. Standing before small groups of eager learners, I shared my own story, how I had struggled, how I had fallen, and ultimately, how I had risen. I reminded them that every word, every sentence was a step forward. Their bright, hopeful eyes mirrored the same determination that had once driven me into the bustling streets of New York, and in that exchange of stories and encouragement, I found a deep sense of purpose. Every evening, as I returned to my little apartment, I marveled at the journey I had undertaken. I remembered the timid girl who had arrived at JFK Airport, overwhelmed by the fast pace of life and burdened by the weight of her own doubts. That girl, Emma Carter, had slowly transformed into a confident young woman who now navigated the complexities of a sprawling metropolis with grace and resilience. I kept a small framed photo on my desk, a snapshot of me smiling broadly at Times Square during one of my first visits. It served as a reminder of where I had been and how far I had come. Now, as I continue my journey in the United States, I know that New York is more than just a city. It is a living, breathing testament to the power of dreams and the endless possibilities that await those who dare to step beyond the familiar. Each conversation, every interaction, has been a building block in my personal evolution. I am learning to speak not only in words, but in a language of empathy, hope, and shared humanity. The days melded into one another as I continued to weave my life in New York, each moment adding a new hue to my ever-evolving portrait. One particularly memorable week began with an unexpected invitation that would deepen my connection with the city. One brisk morning, while walking along the tree-lined streets of the West Village, I received a call from Lisa. "Emma, you've got to come to this community art fair in Soho. It's a celebration of creativity, and everyone is invited," she said excitedly. The idea of an art fair in a bustling neighborhood like Soho thrilled me. It was a perfect setting to mingle with New Yorkers who saw the world through diverse lenses. I quickly got ready, feeling a mix of nervous anticipation and curiosity about what new encounters the day might bring. Arriving at the fair, I was immediately engulfed by the buzz of artistic expression. Stalls showcased handmade jewelry, vibrant paintings, and sculptures that defied gravity. There was music in the air, a blend of live acoustic sets, and the soft hum of conversation that filled every corner. I wandered through the fair, absorbing every detail with wide eyes. At one booth, I met a passionate sculptor named Marcus Reed. Marcus was in his late 30s, with a gentle demeanor and a contagious enthusiasm for his craft. "Your work is amazing," I complimented him, pausing before a mesmerizing sculpture made of recycled metal. "Thank you," he replied with a warm smile. "I believe every piece tells a story. Just like every person here, every one of us is crafting our own narrative in this city." His words resonated with me deeply. I realized that in New York, even art was a language that transcended words and connected souls through shared emotion. I spent the next few hours chatting with other artists and art enthusiasts, each conversation a tapestry of language, dreams, and aspirations. I made sure to ask questions, even if my English wavered sometimes. With every exchange, I felt less like an outsider and more like a participant in the grand, unfolding story of New York. Later that day, while sitting on a bench near the vibrant murals of the neighborhood, I reflected on how every encounter, whether brief or profound, had contributed to my transformation. I thought about the kind words of Jenna Kim during that rainy day, the enlightening conversations with professors and new friends, and the serendipitous moments that painted my journey with hope. I began to write a long entry in my journal, detailing not only the events of the day, but also the emotions behind each experience. I wrote about the art fair, the spirited dialogue with Marcus Reed, and the silent nods of encouragement that I felt from those around me. Every sentence was a testament to the growth I was experiencing, both in my mastery of English and in my understanding of life itself. In the weeks that followed, my routine in New York continued to evolve. Mornings were spent with coffee in hand, strolling through different neighborhoods, each with its own distinct character. I found myself drawn to the eclectic energy of Brooklyn's street markets, where the aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the sound of impromptu music performances. On one such morning, while exploring a vibrant market near Dumbo, I met a charismatic food truck owner named Ricardo Santos. Ricardo's food truck, known for its fusion of Latin flavors and classic American dishes, was a local favorite. "Hola, Emma! How are you today?" He greeted me cheerfully, his voice a perfect blend of Spanish warmth and English familiarity. "Hi, Ricardo. I'm good, thank you," I replied, proud that I could respond without hesitation. We chatted about his culinary journey, the inspiration behind his recipes, and the challenges of running a business in a city as competitive as New York. Ricardo's story was both humbling and motivating. He had come to New York with little more than a dream and had built a thriving business through persistence, passion, and a deep respect for the melting pot of cultures around him. His journey, much like mine, was a mosaic of setbacks, lessons, and triumphs. As summer waned into early autumn, the city began to change its rhythm. The heat gave way to a crisp coolness, and the streets filled with the vibrant colors of fall. I often found myself wandering through Central Park, where the golden leaves whispered stories of change and renewal. One chilly afternoon, as I sat on a park bench wrapped in a light scarf, I met an elderly gentleman named Samuel Green. Samuel was a retired teacher who spent his days in the park, feeding the birds and engaging in lively conversations with passers-by. "Young lady, you look like you have stories to tell," Samuel remarked with a twinkle in his eye. Encouraged by his gentle demeanor, I shared some of my experiences, from the struggles of my early days to the small victories that had brightened my path. Samuel listened intently, nodding, and occasionally offering his own insights. "Remember," he said softly, "language is more than just words. It's about the connection you forge with others. Each conversation is a stepping stone, a chance to learn more about the world and about yourself." His words further affirmed my belief that every misstep, every hesitant word, was part of the grand adventure of becoming fluent not only in English, but in life. One evening, as the city lit up with the dazzling glow of streetlights and neon signs, I attended a small poetry reading at a cozy venue in the Lower East Side. The room was intimate, with a modest stage illuminated by soft, warm light. I could feel the anticipation in the air as local poets took turns sharing their verses. When it was my turn, I hesitated only for a moment before stepping up to the microphone. I recited a poem I had been working on, a piece that encapsulated my journey from doubt to determination. My voice trembled at first, but as I continued, I found strength in the quiet encouragement of the audience. When I finished, there was a moment of hushed silence, followed by a round of applause that filled me with an indescribable sense of belonging. After the reading, I struck up a conversation with a fellow poet, a woman named Olivia Martinez, who was known for her evocative writing and her ability to capture the soul of the city in her words. "Your poem was beautiful, Emma," she told me. "You have a rare gift of expressing vulnerability and hope. Keep writing. Your words matter." Her compliment stayed with me long after that night. It reminded me that every attempt, every brave act of self-expression, was a step towards not just mastering a language, but also claiming my place in the world. As winter crept closer, I found myself embracing the colder days as opportunities to explore the less traveled parts of the city. I started attending community events that celebrated diverse cultures, from Scandinavian winter festivals in Queens to Caribbean carnivals in Brooklyn. Each event was a microcosm of the United States, a fusion of traditions, languages, and histories. At one such event in Harlem, I encountered a group of musicians who played a captivating blend of jazz and soul. Their music spoke a universal language of rhythm and emotion. I spent hours listening, occasionally joining in with clumsy attempts at humming along, letting the melodies guide my understanding of a culture that was at once foreign and deeply inviting. During this time, my English continued to improve steadily. I began to notice that the words, once elusive and tangled, now flowed more freely in conversation. I could joke with new friends, share my thoughts in group discussions, and even debate topics that once intimidated me. It was as though New York, with its relentless pace and myriad voices, had become a vast, immersive classroom where every experience was a lesson and every person a teacher. My journey wasn't solely about overcoming language barriers. It was also a voyage into self-discovery. I started to reflect on the deeper meanings of my experiences. In quiet moments, whether watching the gentle snowfall from my apartment window or sitting in the solitude of an empty museum late at night, I contemplated the nature of change. I realized that the process of learning a new language was analogous to the journey of life itself, filled with challenges, unexpected detours, and moments of profound beauty. I wrote essays and reflective pieces in my journal, piecing together the mosaic of my identity as both a French native and an emerging New Yorker. One crisp December day, a month before the new year, I found myself volunteering at a local shelter that provided meals and language tutoring for immigrants. There, I met a diverse group of people, each with their own story of struggle, hope, and resilience. Among them was a man named Ibrahim al-Sayyid, who had arrived from the Middle East with little more than the hope of a better future for his family. Ibrahim's determination to learn English and adapt to his new environment mirrored my own experiences. In our shared moments, we practiced conversations, exchanged cultural anecdotes, and encouraged each other to persevere despite the odds. His quiet strength and unwavering optimism reminded me that every story, no matter how challenging, was a thread in the rich tapestry of the human experience. That winter, New York revealed another facet of its charm during the festive season. The city was alive with holiday spirit, its streets adorned with twinkling lights, and the sound of carols echoing in the crisp night air. I joined a community celebration in a small park in Midtown, where neighbors of different backgrounds gathered to share food, music, and laughter. As we stood together, savoring hot cocoa and gingerbread cookies, I felt a deep sense of unity. The experience was a vivid reminder that New York was more than a city. It was a living mosaic of hope, courage, and diversity. In the midst of the celebrations, I received an invitation to a local community center where a workshop on creative writing was being held. The workshop was designed for newcomers who were eager to express themselves through the written word. With a mix of apprehension and excitement, I attended, unsure of how my words would be received. The facilitator, a kind woman named Eleanor James, greeted each participant warmly. "Writing is the art of letting your soul speak," she said, encouraging us to pour our hearts onto paper without fear of judgment. For several weeks, I attended the workshop, sharing my writings and listening to the stories of others. The sessions were transformative. I learned not only how to better structure my sentences and expand my vocabulary, but also how to harness my unique experiences into compelling narratives. With each story shared, I grew more comfortable with my identity, a blend of my French heritage and my new life in America. I discovered that language was not just a tool for communication, but also a medium through which I could articulate my dreams, fears, and hopes. As the year drew to a close, I found myself standing at a crossroads of reflection and anticipation. New York had become my sanctuary, a place where I had discovered the strength to overcome my fears and the courage to embrace change. I had come to understand that every mispronounced word, every awkward conversation, was an essential part of the journey, a reminder that growth often comes wrapped in the disguise of struggle. I realized that learning English was not merely about acquiring a new language. It was about connecting with others, sharing our collective human experiences, and ultimately, finding my own voice in a vast, ever-changing world. Now, as I gaze out of my window at the city that never sleeps, I feel a profound gratitude for every step I have taken and every person I have met along the way. New York is a city of endless stories, and mine is only one of many interwoven narratives that form the fabric of this extraordinary place. Each day brings new challenges, fresh opportunities, and the promise of another lesson in resilience, empathy, and self-discovery. In sharing my journey, I hope to inspire anyone who dares to step into the unknown, to learn, to grow, and to embrace the beautiful imperfection of their own unfolding story. New York taught me that language, like life, is a journey filled with twists and turns, moments of doubt, and bursts of clarity. It taught me that every encounter, no matter how fleeting, has the potential to leave an indelible mark on your heart. As I continue to navigate this vast urban landscape, I am reminded that the most transformative journeys are not those measured in miles or achievements, but those that reshape our inner world. I am Emma Carter, a woman who once trembled at the sound of rapid English conversations and who now finds solace in the shared cadence of human connection. My journey in New York is far from over, and with each new experience, I add another vibrant stroke to the canvas of my life. Spring arrived in New York with a burst of vibrant energy that seemed to mirror my own inner transformation. The harsh winter chill gave way to the gentle warmth of the sun, and the city awakened with renewed hope and possibility. I found myself captivated by the subtle changes: the first blossoms on trees in Central Park, the soft hum of outdoor conversations, and the gentle murmur of life re-emerging on the busy sidewalks. One bright morning, I decided to visit a neighborhood that I had always admired from afar, the historic district of Greenwich Village. The narrow, winding streets, lined with quaint brownstones and small cafes, held an undeniable charm. As I strolled along the cobblestone paths, I met a group of local artists setting up an impromptu exhibition in a small sunlit park. Among them was a thoughtful painter named Benjamin Lee, whose canvases depicted dreamy cityscapes that blended New York's recognizable landmarks with surreal abstract forms. "Your eyes see the city in a way few can," Benjamin remarked, when I complimented one of his works, a painting of the Washington Square Arch surrounded by swirling colors. His words made me pause and reflect on how far I had come, from a timid newcomer struggling to string together a sentence to someone capable of appreciating and articulating the beauty around me. I thanked him sincerely, and we spent a leisurely hour discussing art, culture, and the evolving spirit of New York. His passion for painting was infectious, and I left that conversation feeling inspired to capture my own experiences in sketches and short writings. As days passed, I dedicated more time to exploring lesser-known parts of the city. I joined a weekend walking tour organized by a local cultural society. The tour took me through neighborhoods rich in history, from the bohemian vibe of the East Village to the striking modernity of Midtown. Along the way, I encountered diverse characters who shared their stories of struggle and triumph in a city that never ceased to evolve. There was Mr. Patel, a kind gentleman who had started a small spice shop in Queens after emigrating from India, and Ms. Johnson, a retired nurse who spent her afternoons volunteering at a community garden in Brooklyn. Each encounter added depth to my understanding of the American mosaic. During one such tour, I found myself in a quiet courtyard in Lower Manhattan. The serene atmosphere was a stark contrast to the typical hustle of New York streets. I sat on a weathered bench, opening my journal to capture the scene in words. The gentle rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children playing, and the soft murmur of conversations created a perfect symphony of life. It was in these moments that I realized how intimately my journey was intertwined with the pulse of the city. Every day presented a new lesson in patience, resilience, and the beauty of change. Meanwhile, my commitment to mastering English continued to bear fruit. I enrolled in a creative writing course at a nearby community college, a decision that would further enrich my journey. My classmates, a vibrant tapestry of backgrounds and experiences, became both friends and fellow travelers in the intricate world of language. One such friend, Natalia Morales, a spirited woman from Colombia, introduced me to the art of storytelling in a way that transcended grammatical rules and vocabulary. With her, I learned that the heart of language lay in its ability to convey emotions and bridge cultural divides. Natalia and I spent many evenings in a cozy little bookshop near the college, discussing our favorite authors, from American classics to contemporary voices. Our conversations often meandered from literature to life itself. Emma, every story you write, every word you speak, is a step toward understanding not only English, but also the diverse souls that call New York home, she would say. Her words always filled me with a sense of purpose and belonging. At the same time, life presented challenges that tested my newfound confidence. One afternoon, while navigating the busy streets near a subway station, I encountered an unexpected delay due to a power outage that halted the train service. In the midst of a growing crowd of commuters, I felt a familiar pang of anxiety creeping up. The uncertainty of the situation, compounded by the rapid-fire exchanges around me, momentarily erased the calm I had cultivated. Yet, in that chaos, I found an opportunity to practice patience and empathy. I struck up a conversation with a fellow stranded commuter, an elderly woman named Margaret Stevens, who shared stories of New York from decades past. Her recollections of a city undergoing transformation during her youth offered me a unique perspective on resilience. Together, we waited, our dialogue a gentle reminder that even in moments of disruption, human connection could restore order and hope. Encouraged by these experiences, I began to embrace every challenge as a chance to grow. My workplace at the quaint bookstore became a second home where I could experiment with my English in a supportive environment. One memorable day, a local writer named Thomas Baker visited the store in search of rare literary treasures. We engaged in an extended conversation about classic literature and contemporary narratives. His thoughtful questions and attentive listening pushed me to articulate my thoughts more clearly. I recalled his advice later that day. Emma, language is not only about perfect grammar or smooth sentences, it's about the courage to share your unique story. Those words resonated deeply, and I resolved to write more, both in my journal and in the little notebook I carried during my explorations. As the city embraced the bright hues of spring, I too felt a rebirth of sorts, a blossoming of confidence, creativity, and understanding. I continued to immerse myself in every facet of New York culture, from attending spontaneous street performances in Washington Square Park to savoring the diverse culinary delights in neighborhoods like Astoria and Flushing. Each experience was a building block in the mosaic of my life. One particularly sunny day, Lisa invited me to a rooftop garden party in the heart of Manhattan. The venue, tucked away atop a repurposed industrial building, offered breathtaking views of the skyline and a serene escape from the urban din. There, amidst clusters of lush greenery and twinkling fairy lights, I reconnected with friends both old and new. Over glasses of sparkling cider, we shared laughter, music, and dreams. The conversation flowed effortlessly, a testament to how far I had come in my journey of self expression. In that vibrant setting, I felt a profound gratitude for the opportunities that New York had gifted me, a city that had once intimidated me with its enormity now felt like a nurturing community that celebrated individuality and growth. In the midst of these celebrations, I also found solace in quiet reflection. Late one evening, while sitting by the window of my modest apartment in the East Village, I watched as the city lights flickered to life, each one a silent beacon of countless stories. I thought back to the timid girl who had first stepped off a plane at JFK, overwhelmed by the cacophony of a new language and culture. That girl had transformed over time, through moments of hardship, bursts of inspiration, and the constant presence of kind souls who helped pave the way. My journey was not just about learning English. It was about embracing every facet of the human experience, about finding my place in a city as grand and diverse as New York. Determined to give back to the community that had nurtured my growth, I began to mentor fellow newcomers at the local literacy center. I shared my own experiences with aspiring English learners, offering gentle corrections, heartfelt encouragement, and practical tips for navigating both the language and the labyrinth of the city. Each session felt like a small ripple of change, a shared understanding that we were all in this together, each learning and growing from our shared vulnerabilities and strengths. I remember one particular session vividly. A young man named Ethan, who had recently moved from Eastern Europe, expressed his frustration at not being able to convey his thoughts during job interviews. His eyes were filled with despair, and I recognized the same fear I once had. I took a deep breath and recounted my early struggles in New York, emphasizing that every mispronounced word, every hesitant sentence, was a stepping stone toward eventual mastery. I encouraged him to embrace his unique accent and to use his experiences as strengths. His smile as he expressed a renewed sense of hope was one of the most rewarding moments of my journey. Over time, my life in New York blossomed into a tapestry of interconnected moments, a rich narrative woven from shared laughter, unexpected challenges, artistic revelations, and quiet introspection. The city had taught me that every encounter was a lesson, every conversation a chance to learn, and every day an opportunity to reinvent myself. I no longer saw language as a barrier, but as a vibrant, ever-evolving expression of identity and connection. Now, as I look toward the future, I see a horizon filled with promise and endless possibilities. My journey in New York continues to unfold, each new experience deepening my understanding of this remarkable city and of myself. I'm no longer just Emma Carter, the newcomer struggling with English. I am a storyteller, a mentor, and a proud participant in the ongoing narrative of New York, a city that celebrates growth, diversity, and the beauty of every imperfect, brave step forward. In the mosaic of New York's endless stories, mine is a testament to the transformative power of resilience, community, and the courage to embrace change. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and eyes set on the horizon, I continue to walk the vibrant streets of this city, one word one conversation, and one unforgettable experience at a time. As I continued to embrace life in New York, I realized that my journey was far from over. Every day, the city had something new to teach me, whether it was about language, culture, or the strength hidden within me. One evening, as I sat in my favorite corner of the bookstore, sipping a warm cup of chamomile tea, I reflected on how much had changed since my arrival. The girl who once hesitated to speak now found joy in conversations, who once struggled to express herself now wrote stories in her journal, capturing the essence of the city through her own eyes. Yet, despite my growth, there were moments when I still felt like an outsider. No matter how fluent I became, there were nuances of the culture and language that still felt unfamiliar. I would hear jokes that I didn't quite understand, or idioms that made no sense to me, and sometimes I would still stumble over my words when I was nervous. One of those moments happened when I was invited to a dinner party by Thomas Baker, the writer I had met at the bookstore. It was a small gathering of intellectuals, writers, journalists, and artists, all of whom had a deep appreciation for language and literature. When I arrived, I was both excited and intimidated. The conversation flowed effortlessly around me, filled with clever wit and references to books I hadn't read yet. At one point, Thomas turned to me and asked, "Emma, what's your favorite novel? One that has shaped your perspective on life?" I hesitated. I knew the answer in my heart, but for a moment, I felt the weight of expectation. I took a deep breath and answered, "Pride and Prejudice" by Jane Austen, because it taught me that people are more than just first impressions, that we grow, change, and learn from each other. There was a pause, then a few nods of agreement. A woman across the table smiled and said, "That's a beautiful choice, and beautifully put." Relief washed over me. I had been so worried about saying something wrong, but in that moment, I realized that what truly mattered was speaking from the heart. That night, as I walked home through the quiet streets, I felt something shift within me. I no longer saw myself as just someone trying to fit into this city. I was already a part of it. As the weeks passed, I continued pushing myself to experience everything New York had to offer. I attended live poetry readings in small coffee shops, took a dance class in Harlem, and even tried my hand at stand-up comedy at an open mic night. Each experience, whether thrilling or terrifying, added another layer to my journey. One of the most memorable experiences happened in early summer when I decided to visit the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. The moment I stepped inside, I was surrounded by breathtaking beauty, vivid flowers in full bloom, the gentle hum of bees, and the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. It was a peaceful escape from the chaos of the city. As I walked through the cherry blossom trees, I found a bench and sat down, letting the tranquility of the garden wash over me. I thought about everything I had been through, the struggles, the triumphs, the countless moments of self-doubt, and the incredible people who had helped me along the way. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I pulled out my notebook and began to write, not just about the garden, but about my journey, my feelings, my hopes. Words flowed effortlessly, as if they had been waiting inside me all along. By the time the sun began to set, I had filled pages with my thoughts. And in that moment, I knew that I had found something truly special. not just a home in New York, but a voice of my own. From that day forward, I no longer doubted myself. I no longer feared making mistakes or sounding imperfect, because I finally understood that language, much like life, was about connection, not perfection. And so, I continued my journey, embracing every new experience, every conversation, every challenge, knowing that each step was another chapter in the beautiful, ever evolving story of my life in New York.